This is Tim.
I'm Mulele.
And this is Critiquing Comics. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim with Mulele in Tokyo. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
I'm okay. Not too much exciting here. It's just been hot and school is starting and getting busier and still spending all my time editing podcasts. But anyway.
Same old, same old.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about Terminal Velocity by Barry Corbett. This is a comic that just showed up in my Dropbox one day, uploaded via the link at deconstructingcomics.com. There wasn't an email or anything, just, there's a comic in my Dropbox. Okay. It's a 105-page PDF file, which collects his memoir comics that had previously been sold in, I guess, like floppy issues that are sold through Indie Planet, a self-publishing comics site. They start out, most of them are these one-page chapters. They jump around chronologically, so it's kind of like he's saying, there was this one time when, this happened or that happened. And there are a lot of stories about scuba diving, skydiving, violent ice hockey in the 70s. But then it also gets into how his older brother died of appendicitis as a kid and how that affected his family and affected his own psychology. And at first it kind of seems like these things are not really connected, but I did read the whole thing. Only once, but I read the whole thing. Because it took a lot of time because it's a little dense. It's not dense there's more art than text, but there's still a lot of text. But as I went, I felt like, this really is all one story, or much of it is anyway, because he gets into this with he actually shows some of his therapy sessions, and talking about how he had kind of an emotional distance from everyone to avoid being hurt again, and he put himself in extreme situations like fighting in a hockey rink, skydiving, and so on, so he could feel something. And he works through a lot of stuff with his therapist, and then he would cut away to something else, no, I want to know more about this. Come back. Although I also, for much of it, I kind of appreciated the non-chronological approach because some of it's kind of heavy and other parts are hilarious. And I kind of liked having the comic relief between the heavy parts, where if all the heavy parts were together, it could be a little bit of a drag. Although I found that part very interesting. And I had to agree with another reviewer I found online that, at least for me, I thought the stories were relatable. A couple of them reminded me of things I dealt with in the past, like sleepwalking or a dream that seemed to have a lot of symbolism. Now, I know you didn't read as much of it as I do, but you said you had some less complimentary things to say about it.
Yeah, I read the first 20 pages. It is a dense read, but it's without flavor. It reminded me of Silver Age comic book.
Mm-hmm.
The caption says Hulk smash, while Hulk in the picture smashes a tank.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of thing is fine if you're building a rhythm and then you're leading up to something if there was a purpose for it. But there's no hint of that in the beginning of the story. There seems to be no lead up to anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no rhyme or reason for the chronological choices he makes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you feel that I'm absolutely off the mark here because you read the entire thing, then please jump in. But the anecdotes that he puts down, in and of themselves, are not interesting because they're kind of everyday things that happen to a lot of people. Getting into a fight at the hockey rink, or going skydiving, or scuba diving, or any of the other things. Yes,
Well,
some little adventure happens here and there, but the thing about it is, we know he has an older brother and a younger brother. He often says we, but none of them are shown unless the topic is specifically about that other person. And I had a lot of problems with that. Because the visual cues are not enough. And yeah, you told the story about how the guy accidentally cut you with the box cutter at work because he was trying to do a prank and he fucked up. And like the thing about a 4-panel strip, and these are 9-panel grids.
Mm-hmm.
But a 4-panel strip will have the introduction, the development, the twist, and the resolution as a basic tenet of a story. And these stories are lacking in any kind of twist or any kind of interesting perspective. They're just told flatly. And that's the problem that I had with this. It's so flat through everything that I read. And it was so monotonous. And just, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. But nothing about really, what it meant to him on a very personal level. Nothing to say that it was... It would stand out from any other person having a similar experience because of X. Now, the therapy sessions, I think, would have helped had he introduced them in the beginning, for me anyway, because I wouldn't wade through it to get to that point. But anyway, that's...
Yeah, I mean, I guess it did... When I first looked at it, when the file arrived and I glanced at it and I thought, well, this looks kind of plain, kind of dry. Maybe just because of the art style. And yeah, at the beginning, it is a bit rough going. I think it got better as it went. But yeah, I can see that, some people such as you might get so bogged down in the beginning that they just don't feel like proceeding. I felt I was rewarded for getting through to the end, where I started feeling some momentum. But yeah, the momentum comes a little late. And I do agree that the arrangement of the strips is a bit random because it is a collection of various things. And I think he's kind of used to doing like newspaper comics and doing short installments. A lot of these are 1 page. They get a little longer as it goes. Some of them are 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. There's one, I think the longest one, I'm not sure how many pages it is about his comics career. Yeah, I can see your criticisms. It didn't bother me as much, and I came to enjoy it, but I did have to kind of push myself through it first.
But see, that's the problem of any media that you consume. If it doesn't catch you in the beginning, then they're messing up. Most people understand that this is a necessary thing in anything that you create. Movie's got about 10 minutes. Comic book has what percentage of its entirety? And having read a fifth of it, there seemed to be nothing to it. And then beyond that, looking forward, jumping ahead a little bit, I did feel that there was some information that I had missed. Like he was beginning to refer to things. But each story by itself is such a non-starter that a tapestry made of boring cloth cannot be interesting as a whole. If that works as a metaphor.
I guess, although some of the stories were more interesting than others. Some I would not call boring.
I get that. But the one that kind of broke me was the one where he's talking about the death of his brother from appendicitis. That should have hurt me the way it hurt him, or it should have really shown how dysfunctional his family had gotten, rather than one sentence at the end of the strip talking about his mother needs to start over.
Yeah, I think it could have benefited from seeing the book as one story and sort of arranging the strips in a more conscious way to guide you through it. Where particularly there was one point, kind of, it's maybe about 3/4 of the way through the book, where his therapist advises him to try to, because he feels distant from his dad, and he's saying, why don't you try to like go to a ball game with him or something, and it results in a breakthrough with his dad, and his dad really wants to talk about losing the brother and everything, and comes up with a bunch of family photo slides that Barry has never seen. And then we switch to completely different things. Like, wait, what? I'm all ready to find out more about this. And now we're talking about things that are superfluous. If I'm pronouncing that word correctly, superfluous. I can't say it. Superfluous. Thank you.
There you go.
But yeah, the randomness of it at first was fine with me because I didn't see connections between the various stories. But when I did, then it started to seem not as well arranged. Like I wanted him to follow through more on those things, but I felt like he was treating it as just sort of a collection of the stories, and that he wasn't paying enough attention to the order that they were in.
Sure, but each story has to be that good to stand on its own if you're going to do that. Mm-hmm. Like the first story is the one about the box cutter incident at Gallahew's. And it by itself doesn't actually mean anything. It's not a jump off point. It's not an introduction to how crazy his life is. It's just a random episode. And so, okay, maybe something happens. And then go to the next one, it's target practice. Go to the next one, it's the antimatter ball. The antimatter ball is like, what the fuck is this? Why am I reading about an antimatter ball? And what was the point of this story? I could not make heads or tails of it. And there were a couple of times where it just seemed like, okay, kids get into some fucked up shit. Mm-hmm. Okay, they do random shit. Okay, he's into skydiving and scuba diving. But, I mean, I'm assuming, because there's no credit for one, that he has no editor. And this book could have really used an editor. It's not that he's a bad writer. It's that he's a writer without a kind of purpose. And none of the anecdotes have any punch. Mm-hmm. And so I think an editor would have asked, maybe a good editor would have asked, well, why is this one first? And if the author had said, no, then the editor would say, okay, well, you must decide why it's first. Or maybe suggest that this other one would be first because it's more poignant, it leads to something later, it has a jump-off point of interest for the reader. Because it's not to say that there's nothing here. I mean, the art is quite accomplished. He knows what he's doing comically, although, one point. For example, on page 13, there's one arrow that points to another panel. 1, 2, 3, 4. the third panel points to the fourth panel.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed a little bit unnecessary. And a couple of times where this has happened, where it seemed obvious that that's the panel that you go to, but he still felt the need to say, no, this way. I don't think he was breaking any rules in comics there. It kind of felt like a lack of trust of the reader. But
maybe, although I've heard of people who really dislike stacking panels on the left side because they find it kind of, I think it could look kind of confusing because the top stacked panel and the tall vertical panel have the same top border, they're even, and so it kind of looks like you're supposed to go to the right, but then you got a panel down here. I don't know. I mean, I see your point, because although actually as I was growing up, I did see panels like this where you went to the right and then go down the vertical panel and then off to the left. They're with arrows.
Yeah, well, confusing layout, sure, but this is not really confusing layout. It's so evenly paced and spaced. It really isn't necessary. But anyway, the artwork is quite accomplished. It's very smoothly drawn. It does change up styles a little bit here and there. One section of it does seem much more like field notes than the kind of calm and constant draftmanship of the majority of the comic. But a lot of these vignettes need to breathe, and some of them don't need to be there. And had they a little twist in them, I think it would have been a much, much better read.
Yeah. I guess because some of them did make me laugh in the last panel, and kind of kept me going. But yeah, some of them maybe didn't really have a point, didn't really tie in with much of anything.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear the author's intent behind a lot of this. And it's a shame that he just threw it in your Dropbox and walked away.
Yeah, or at least if he sent an email, I didn't get it. So
yeah, so if you are the author, please write in. And if you think I'm full of shit, please let us know with all the passion you can muster. I would very much like to be shown the virtues of your comic, because I'm not down on it, but I think it really could have used an editor. Or who am I kidding? I'm really down on it, but I still think it could have used an editor. But real quick, Tim. So, having read the entire comic, does it finally come to some sort of catharsis, point of resolution, or otherwise satisfactory ending?
Well, so the last comic is about, he's with his therapist, and he's saying, now that he has kids and all, and he's running short of money, as you do, and so he's going to take time off from the therapist, and they're talking about the progress that he's made, where before he could never seem to get beyond a certain point in a relationship with a woman. He'd start distancing himself from her. But now he's worked through that. He's got married. He's got kids. He's improved his relationship with his dad. So the last comic is a pretty good wrap-up and a good place to end it. The only thing that bothered me was that, I mentioned the comic about reconnecting with his dad, and then after that he goes into like a bunch of stuff. I mean, the part about his comics career was good, although I think I needed that a little sooner. And some of the other stuff, was just felt like it was kind of in the way, because now I wanted to know more about, his therapy and his relationship with his dad and stuff. And I wanted another strip about what he found in those photos that his dad gave him, but he didn't give us that. So I thought the final comic was good, but I wanted something to in between that and the one about his dad, and some of this other stuff in between would have been better either earlier in the book or not at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm glad I read it. I can see how someone might not make it to the end, because it does have its problems, I guess. But for the most part, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I had to push myself through it a little bit in the early stages.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anything else. Do you?
Yeah, I've got quite a bit.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to save it till the end, but
So this is the end. So
yeah, okay. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, I kind of threw down the gauntlet to Chris and Oscar to make some comics.
Right, and just for people who haven't listened before, they're your friends that you've been making another podcast with, because you're a glutton for punishment like me, I guess.
It wasn't enough to have to read through one comic a week. It was more of I got to read several comics a week, plus I've got to edit this sucker.
And of course, Oscar and Chris were on our Deconstructing Comics episode about Akira a while back.
Yeah, so the podcast we make is called Tokyo Comics Attack. Anybody wants to check it out, please. Basically, the three of us make comics actively. Tim, you're not so active these days, but you need to clone yourself before you can get active again, I think.
Yeah.
But as active artists, we'll print. That's the thing. And none of us has printed recently, and we're kind of looking back at the glory days of printing, like 2 years ago. Those are the days when I made a comic book. I'm making comics. We're all making comics, but we're just doing stuff digitally. And it's like, no, let's do some Riso comics. Let's do. Risography is kind of glorified photocopy, but you can get some interesting effects, and I've made a couple of comics with it, and I really like it. So I invited them to make some comics, some Riso comics with me. They all said yes. Both of them said yes. And so we all started making comics, or at least that's what I am hoping that's what's happening. I don't really know. We don't really talk about it. But for myself, I am making comics, not one, but two. And I had an idea to format in the same format as Weasel by Dave Cooper. The size of the book, the style of the book. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just recognizing what you're talking about. Yeah, Dave Cooper did kind of a magazine format that was at first mostly his stuff and later all his stuff.
Yeah. I'm not really talking about a series. I'm just talking about a one-off book at this point. Okay. Because the continuing story in that Weasel book, those 5 issues, is a pretty full-on story. But I don't have a story of that size that I want to tell yet. But having formatted that book and formatted my book to those specifications, and realizing that, okay, risograph or offset, either way, it's going to be a black and white deal. And Chris started talking about a gallery show to promote the book, seeing how we don't go to conventions anymore. And I thought, okay, yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. At least with a gallery, we can kind of control the space, maybe less risk than doing a convention hall. So if there's a gallery show, I kind of need the artwork to be all on one page so I can hang it up in the gallery, at least some of the pages, to promote the book. And so I came to a couple of rules. Number one, everything that I put on the page is what will be printed. So for people who don't know, my usual way of making comics is I do one stroke of a paintbrush on about 90 different pieces of paper, then collect them all into Photoshop, and there I've got a page. Mm-hmm. Which means it's entirely just layers upon layers of stuff. And yeah, I'm not kidding when I say 90 layers, because I really am like effects heavy and all that stuff, especially for like Mind Gator or something like that. But I wanted to kind of move away from that, get everything on one page. And since, Dave Cooper is such a boss on the page, did everything with a Hunt 102, including the lettering, which is all on the page right there. I'm not going to do that, because Hunt 102s, I feel like I'm fighting for the soul of the comic against the pen. I'm going to use brushes and markers and those things, because I just like to work with those. But I decided to do the lettering on the page as well, and to get everything on the page, all the corrections, all the marks that need to be made to make the comic whole. It'll be there. There'll be no editing in Photoshop, no fixing in Photoshop. I'll just scan it, adjust the light and dark to make it clear, and that is it. And so that's the challenge that I'm kind of giving myself. I had an idea to do one comic, and that was my ask to Chris and Oscar. Wound up with two stories somehow. One, I'm talking about two demons from hell that escort the dead to the River Sanzu, which is the same as the River Styx, I guess. Kind of a modern take on it. And the other one is I finally decided to do Don't Touch My Fucking Bike.
That's a title you've had rolling around for a couple of years.
Yeah. It's a story of when my bicycle got stolen. And I don't want to say too much more than that. Hopefully it'll go some strange places. I'm still kind of writing it. But as I'm producing pages now for that, I'm finding publishing comics is the thing that has kind of re-energized me. And I should say here that, a couple of years ago, my girlfriend said, look at all those comics in your closet. You're never going to sell those fuckers. Stop. And so, okay, dear. And so I stopped printing comics. I've been making stuff digitally, and I've been making stuff for projects that haven't been released yet, and may be a while before they're released. But anyway, yeah, that was a bad idea, because that just killed my momentum. And after my last printed book, yeah, it takes me a month to make a page. But I'm finding with this new project, I'm making about a page a day, and I'm really enjoying that. So if everything continues with the momentum that I have now, you should have 2 new comics coming up in a Kickstarter sometime in February. I mean, I'll be done with the comics probably by December, but Kickstarter in February, maybe a gallery show in April of next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll have a vaccine by that time.
It would be nice if President Trump in his second term could, get the let out.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you cough?
Me? No. Although actually, gallery shows in Tokyo are going on now. I went to Erica Ward's show a few weeks ago at her usual gallery in Koenji. and bought the program and everything.
Nice.
Had to take off my mask to drink my, what did I get? My juice there. Because she always has it in that sort of coffee shop.
There's Art Cloud
gallery.
Coffee.
I'm sorry?
Isn't it called Art's Cloud Coffee?
Art Cloud, yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, yeah, it's a coffee shop, but with a gallery space. And yeah, it's a cool spot, although I've never been in it when it was open. I somehow missed her show. But yeah, one of these days I will check out her show.
Yeah, she has one every year, so.
Is it only once a year?
Maybe more. I go once a year, I guess. Maybe she's had others that I didn't notice, but
time is meaningless. I have no idea anymore.
Yeah. All right. Good. So, more paper comics from Mulele coming.
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. If you would like to send us your comic, send a PDF or a link. You could send a paper comic. Email me and I'll give you the address to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show.
Sorry, I would like to say if it's really, really dense, it'll probably be more like 20 pages. But anyway.
Yeah, yeah, like this one. Yeah. Okay. So until next time, this is Tim.
And Mulele.
And thanks for listening to Critiquing Comics.